Hello, everyone. This is the Friday live stream. Friday live stream. Goodness gracious. There's actually some things on my mind that I want to talk to you guys about. I'll just wait for some more people to show up. Hello, Brainstorm. Hello, Amanda. Hello, EAP123. Some things on my mind today that I want to talk to you guys about regarding politics, regarding this channel also. Hello, Eric. That sounds like fun. Hello, Christian Estrada. Okay, we got 5 people on here, so it's basically a party. But I'll wait a little bit longer. I'll wait one more minute. 6 people. Now it's really a party. You got seeds in the mail? What are you growing? Did I hear about Saudi Arabia? I have not checked the news at all today. What's happening in Saudi Arabia? Grand Prix to go ahead as planned despite Houthi missile attack. Okay. So the Houthi Saudi, the Yemen Saudi war lives on. Hello, Ricky. Hello, Winter. Doing okay. Hello, Sean. Yes, party like it's 1999. I prefer to party like it's 2019, and 2020 hasn't happened yet. Hello, Michael. Orders seeds. Yeah, I'm curious, Christian. What do you grow? We got 12 people on, so basically here we go. I think we should start. Hello, Fast Joe Corrigan. Oh, okay. The oil and USD. That is interesting. Is that what? I did not hear about this. Interesting. This is like pre-World War II kind of stuff. Saudi Arabia considers accepting yuan instead of dollars for Chinese oil sales. Oh, so the petrodollar is dying. Saudi Arabia considers ditching the dollar for China. I mean, if this ever happened and Saudi Arabia just stopped taking in petrodollars, I think America would just allow Iran to rape Saudi Arabia. What's happening in Serbia? Serbia won't recognize Kosovo's independence. Well, that's nothing new. Is there a preferred way to store seeds? You know what I do honestly is I just put them in a cabinet. I put them in a box. It could be a cardboard box, could be one of those little tin cans you use to keep your sewing equipment in. Basically, those old school cookie tin cans. And just put them in a cabinet in a room. I mean, and that's it. I would say the cooler the room, the better. It's always best, but room temperature should be fine as well. I've never had any issues. I've never had any issues as well at all. Yeah, I think you should be fine. Are the seeds in commercially enclosed bags, or are they in little Ziploc bags? Hello, Amaz Khan. Yeah, rumors. Messed up. Vucic said Kosovars are going to attack us. They started moving troops. Okay. Is that what happened? I'm not seeing anything about troops. Hearing about Serbs rallying. Time for Serbia to scale back military ties with Russia. I don't see anything about troops. Could you send me a link that talks about Serbian troops anywhere? You're new to the garden game. That's cool, man. You know, you're starting, and that's what matters. Are you starting the seeds out in garden beds, or are you going to plant them in containers, or are you going to put them in ground? Hello, Robbie99. Got 15 people online, so here we go. Here we go, guys. Okay, I'm gonna be here for about 2 hours. I don't want to be here that too long because usually it just, for some reason, if I stay here for too long, it just, I don't know. Even though as much as I love talking to you guys, World War III might be happening. Yeah, I agree. Actually, we're seeing the. It's like we're not seeing a world war happening, but we're seeing the process of escalation to that point. Is what I would say. Hello, Chopo. I store them in a dry paper towel in a mason jar. Oh, okay. I put them in Ziploc bags, and then I just little Ziploc bags, and then I just put them in a. Yeah, you know what? I just realized my trash can is showing, and this is going to be a huge freaking distract. For some reason, people get distracted by these things. Hold on. There we go. People get immensely distracted by things. They're like, "What's that? What's that trash can? What? Ted, there's a trash can there." Have you had a look at the doomsday clock? No, I have not. So I'm going to start right now. Okay. So I want to get some things that I wanted to talk about. Yesterday, I wanted to do a video about how the Ukraine conflict is exposing people. It's really giving an opportunity for people to expose who they are in some way or another. So I was going to do this video yesterday. I had all my thoughts arranged. I had all my thoughts lined up for a video. I was going to do it. Everything was going well. It was a good day. I find a sick chicken. And when you have a sick chicken, it's like it's not like a cat or a dog. I mean, when you have chickens are more susceptible to getting sick than cats or dogs, right? With a dog or a cat, once in a while you have a problem, take them to the vet, and usually the problem is easily fixed. With chickens, it it could pop up any moment. And the usual illness that chickens deal with is egg bound. It's basically when an egg gets stuck in the chicken's system. Well, this chicken wasn't eating, and she was sleeping in the egg nesting box at night, which is unusual for a chicken to do because chickens will roost together at night. And I realized that this chicken was egg bound. So I had to basically be the vet because it's way too expensive to go to a vet for a chicken. I mean, a vet will charge you over $100 to fix a bird. It's pretty sad, but it is what it is, right? So I give the chicken an Epsom salt bath. So Epsom salt and warm water will loosen up the uteral muscles within the chicken's body and will help the body push the egg out. Um, I gave her a Tum, which is a heartburn tablet. And the reason why you give a chicken a Tum if it has an egg stuck in its system is because a Tum will have around 1,000 milligrams of calcium, and that calcium will give the chicken's body the strength to push the egg out. So I gave the chicken 1,000 milligrams of calcium, and then I dipped her in a warm Epsom salt bath and massaged her body until the egg came out, and the egg came out, thankfully. And then I gave her another calcium tablet just to give her some extra calcium because she just pushed the whole egg out, so she needs some extra calcium. And I let her rest. And then a few minutes later, she literally popped another egg out. She had 2 eggs stuck in her system. This is a common thing that happens when a chicken has an egg stuck in her system. She will have 2 eggs stuck, and that's usually what causes the egg blind. Is that there's 2 eggs developing at the same time. Thankfully, the egg did not break inside. If an egg breaks inside, then you risk having a bacterial infection. Thankfully, that did not happen. 2 eggs were released, and she was fine. I let her rest for the rest of the night in my bathroom. Next day, checked her out. She was fine. She was eating. She was moving around. And I put her back into the coop where she has joined her friends, and she is still alive, thankfully. So that had a happy ending. The sad ending was I didn't get to do my video because I had to be Mr. Vet. And because by the time I was done with this chicken, it's not just a matter of getting the egg; it's a matter of like preparing the water, the Epsom salt. I gave her some. I gave her some herbal medicine. I gave her some dried burdock root, which will help if she has any sort of bacterial infection. Burdock is an excellent antimicrobial vegetable. Excellent. It's been used in Chinese medicine. I'm pretty certain that there have been several medical papers written on burdock and its medicinal potential. Um, if you have urinary tract infection issues, burdock root will most 100% help you. I don't have I don't have UTI issues, but I know people who do, and it definitely helps them 100%. It's better than an antibiotic because the problem with the antibiotic is that while it does get rid of UTI, it does so at the expense of your beneficial bacterial populations in your microbiome. So it's like a antibiotic is like a nuclear bomb. It kills the good and the bad, and it'll kill the bad bacteria, but it'll also kill the good, and that can really mess up your body and lead to complications like autoimmune issues. So you don't want that. Burdock root will kill the the UTI, the urinary tract infection, while not doing anything to the beneficial bacteria in your gut. And that's why burdock root is so beneficial. And I recommend that everybody grow burdock root, even if you have a little bit of space. Like try to grow some burdock root, and the roots grow really big. Not all the time, but many times they will grow a decent size. Sometimes they'll grow this big, and they're difficult to pull out of the ground. So you need a shovel or a pitchfork to get it out. What we do is we harvest them, we dry the roots, we wash them, and we peel them, and then we use a shaver, like a potato peeler, and we use a cheese grater. You use a cheese grater or a potato peeler, and we just shave it. We make it into shaves, and we put all the shaves in oven on the lowest temperature possible in the oven, and we just leave it there until it dehydrates. And then you take the dried burdock root and you put it in a jar, and you could keep several jars of this stuff. Anytime you have any sort of gut issues or any sort of bacterial issues, burdock root will be your friend. I'm not saying this is going to be 100%, and I'm not a doctor, so I have to make that pre-qualification. But from my experience, from what I've seen, burdock root is definitely a healthy root that you should grow, just for overall health for your body. But I gave the chicken some burdock root in case there were any bacterial issues. And then there was the bath, and then massaging her stomach for like 20 minutes until the egg came out, and then she was still ill. So I'm like, there's still something in there because if a chicken, if she has one egg stuck in her system and it comes out, it's like, okay, you'll see the relief in her body immediately. She'll start flapping her wings, she'll start moving around, she'll start eating immediately. When a chicken releases an egg and that's the only egg that's stuck in her, the signs of her being healed are manifested within seconds. She'll start eating, flapping her wings, jumping up and down, chirping. Like it becomes quickly obvious that she's healed. She was not. She was still feeling ill. I could see it. I'm like, okay, there's still something stuck there. I gave her a second calcium tablet. Boom. A few minutes later, she drops another egg. And then she looked a lot better after that. Just gave her another calcium tablet, gave her a vitamin, multivitamin, let her rest. So by the time I was done, it was like midnight, and I said, "Oh damn!" So I couldn't do my video. And the thing is that when I don't do a video, I kind of feel bad. I'll be honest with you. Um, oh, long time no see, our Romanian friend. Um, hello, Adil. I actually feel kind of bad when I don't do a video, and I feel bad for two reasons. One is because I want to get work out for you guys, and I don't want to lack any sort of productivity. I want to be productive. And secondly, I actually feel like I'm letting you guys down a little bit when I don't put a video out. And it's like, I know it's weird because I've never met you guys before, but it's kind of like you guys, like the people who come here regularly, Chopo, the Romanian dude, Edmund, like all you guys, Robbie, even Heather Green, like even though Heather and I have had our disagreements, her presence is welcome here. Brainstorm, like all you guys, Rebel, Christian, EAP 123, like all you guys, you guys come here and you guys come to these live streams, you watch my videos. You guys are my, I hate to say use the word audience, but you guys are like the regular viewership for the videos, and I don't want to let you guys down. Like I like you guys, and it's become almost like it's almost like you guys are a part of my household in a way. It's weird. It's just a weird thing, but it's yeah. There were um yeah. So I don't want to let you guys down. Anyway, I'm not going on hiatus at all. Trust me. No, no hiatus for me. I think the only case to call a vet is if you're dealing with a much bigger animal. Yes, I agree. With a chicken, usually the problems can be dealt with in your own by your own knowledge, and I have a lot of stuff at my disposal to help a chicken out. Um, but when you have chickens, you have to be the vet. You have to learn quickly what to do for certain problems, and usually the problem that you will deal with, that you will come across as a chicken owner, is egg bind. That is going to be your issue. Um, I have not had an egg bound chicken since June of last year. And the reason why it's been so long since I've had an egg bound chicken is because I have rationed their diet tremendously, but I've lately been kind of spoiling them a little bit, and that's I think that's what leads to these sorts of complications. But yeah, I don't like I don't like. Yes, it's become a sense. It's become in a way a sense of community. I have a sense of community with this YouTube channel, so I don't want to let you guys down. Um, I don't honestly, but there was something that so since I didn't do my video last night, I want to just do my video on this live stream. I want to express to you guys what I wanted to tell you guys last night, and here it is. Okay, so the day before yesterday, I did a post on the story that I found, and the story was that some fascist in Ukraine, some ultranationalist paramilitaries, they murdered a mother and a father and took their kids. And then they took their kid, they put the kids in the car, they kidnapped the kids, they put the kids in a car, and they drove off. This happened in the city of Mariupol, and they were trying to pretend that they were like related to these kids. And oh yeah, we're taking these kids out of the city, we're evacuating them, blah blah blah. And they tried to pretend to be civilians. Russian forces intercepted the car, and they're like, who are these kids? They didn't feel right. They took the guys out of the car, realized they were Azov. I don't know what they did to the Azov guys, but I read that the Russian soldiers took the kids in and brought them to some sort of care. Now these kids' parents were murdered. Okay, this is not a small issue. This is serious. Kids' parents were murdered. They were kidnapped, and then they were used by Azov fighters to try to escape the city. I posted the story up, and within a minute or so, somebody on Twitter wrote me, some guy, I think he calls himself like socialism's enemy or something, some Cold War stuff. Within about a minute, I get a tweet from this guy on Twitter, and he says, "Oh, um, he says there are plenty of Nazis in Russia, and Russia's Wagner mercenary organization has Nazis, and now all of a sudden, all Ukrainians are Nazis." And I'm like, "What the f are you going on about?" I'm posting a story about a family that was slaughtered, parents that were murdered, kids were kidnapped, and they were used by Nazis to try to escape the city of Mariupol. I've never won, and this is the thing I hate about discussing your political views, especially online, is that people will take whatever you say and then they go to the extreme opposite, or they'll take what you've said and they'll take what you've said and they'll drag it on to like the most extreme position ever, and then act as if that's your position. I guess they call this straw manning. I've never once said that all Ukrainians are Nazis. Never made this argument, and I don't feel the need to tell people every single time I talk about Ukraine that I'm not saying that all Ukrainians are Nazis, because that goes without saying. Like any reasonable person knows that I'm not saying that. and any sort of attempt to make it seem that I am saying that is very dishonest. But that within a moment, within a minute, like I get this kind of nonsense. And then about maybe 45 seconds later, I get another tweet from some crazy American guy who says to me, this is what he says to me. He says, "So you're on the side of evil." And I'm thinking, what the hell? Wait, what? I'm posting a story about a mother and father who were murdered. Their kids were kidnapped by fascists. How is me posting the story all of a sudden? How does me posting this story all of a sudden mean that I've joined the side of evil? Like, I thought it was evil to kill a mother and father and kidnap their kids. Last I checked, that's pretty evil, right? But if you post anything that is negative, if you post a story that exposes some kind of evil being done on the Ukrainian side, all of a sudden you're on the side of evil. And party or political partisanship or political bias is pretty much gangsterism in many ways. It's a form of gangsterism in the sense that if you say anything negative about the other side, all of a sudden you're demonizing the other side, you hate the other side, and you're totally on the side of the enemy, of the foe, of the side that you're talking about, of the side that you are expected to praise. And it's gangsterism. It's almost like the Crips and the Bloods. If you do anything positive about the other gang, you are enemy. That's it. You are the enemy. You're part of the enemy. And it's amazing. It's amazing because most Americans, I mean, maybe this is changing, and I think it is changing actually, but most Americans will side with Israel. And this is seen on both parties. Like most Democrats, most Republicans are pro-Israel. Israel will shell areas where there are civilians. And I'm not saying that Israel kills civilians on purpose. In fact, I don't believe that Israel kills civilians on purpose. Thousands of civilians in the West Bank and in Gaza have been killed by Israeli bombs. This is a fact, right? This is an absolute fact. And if you were to tell a Republican or some kind of Democrat who's pro-Israel or some kind of neoliberal, like, hey, look, civilians are being killed, they would say, yeah, but it's not done intentionally. And Hamas or whichever terrorist organization that Israel is fighting, they encamp themselves within civilian populations, or they'll encamp themselves in buildings where civilians live, like, I don't know, apartment structures, or maybe hospitals, or maybe a church or something. And then they will attack Israel from those positions that we would conventionally consider civilian, and then Israel will hit those areas, and they'll say, look, Israel is hitting whatever, a church or something. But most people in the Western world have enough sense to say that the enemy of Israel in this case was parking themselves in civilian populated areas, and that's why. Now, we hear about Russia bombing a maternity hospital, a theater, etc., etc. And for some reason, the leniency that we are willing to give to Israel, we're not willing to give to Russia. Because, like, okay, Ukrainian civilians have been killed by Russian bombs. Yes, that's a fact. Yes, Russian shellings have killed civilian populations. But no one is saying, well, it's not. No one is saying, well, that's not intentional. And then when you actually look at the Russian side, or if you read the Russian media, for example, when they bombed the theater or when they bombed the maternity ward, the Russians said that Azov battalion had made a base within the maternity ward. And that's why Russia hit it. And that actually makes sense. I mean, it's not far-fetched, because why would Russia hit a maternity hospital just for the sake of it? Like, they just want to kill what, pregnant women? How does that help them in the war? They hit it for a reason. And the Russians say, well, we hit it for strategic reasons because Azov had made a base within that maternity hospital. And nobody ever wants to even give any sort of benefit of the doubt to that position. Nobody does. We give it to Israel. We'll give it to even Saudi Arabia. We don't give it to the Russians. But if I say anything like this, I believe all Ukrainians are Nazis, which is obviously nonsense. I am like 100% a complete Voknik, Putin lover, wannabe, uh, Slav, redneck, whatever that term is for Slavs who like sit on in a, what do they call it? They sit in that squat position and drink rakia all day. Like, there's all these, like, all of a sudden you have to have this extreme position. And I don't believe in having an extreme position. Over the years, I have, yeah, over the years, I have, written articles criticizing Russia, criticizing the United States. Hell, I even criticize Donald Trump all the time. And this is coming from somebody who has spent his entire life being a conservative. Like, I've spent my entire life being a conservative, arguing for conservative positions. Heather Green rakia is consumed in Greece and all over the Balkans. So you can look that up and you'll see that that's true. I have held conservative positions my whole life. I've argued for conservative positions my entire life. Yet I'm the type of person that when I see something being like, if I see something evil being done, I don't care who's doing it. I'm going to expose it. That's my position, and that's always been my position. That's why I will, like, for years I was defending the Catholic Church, and then bam, I started exposing Catholic priests, confronting Catholic priests, doing. I did a whole investigation I did a whole investigation of some crazy like Catholic order in the mountains of northern Italy. I mean, like, I will do all sorts of things to combat evil, regardless of what my position may be or what my sentiments are. Um, I do have conservative positions, and I understand that the Republican Party tends to hold to conservative positions. But when I saw Donald Trump saying something like, "Oh, we should allow Japan to have nukes so they could bomb North Korea," I'm like, "Well, that's crazy. Hold on." Or like when I saw Mark Levine is a very famous conservative radio host. When I saw Mark Levine saying on Twitter, "Oh, let's give Japan nukes," I'm like, hold your horses there, buddy. That's freaking insane. Um, you know, the thing about Ukraine is that for years I've been talking about Ukraine. I really want to look because, like, in 20, I think it was in like 20, early 2018, maybe late 2017, I got back onto YouTube and I started doing YouTube videos again because YouTube got rid of me, and then I got like I started doing videos on alternative platforms. And the problem with doing videos on a platform like BitChute is a cool place. It's a great place to back up your videos, so you can upload it on YouTube, but then you could back it up onto BitChute as an extra, as sort of like a security. But the problem with solely being on BitChute is that you really don't get a wholesome audience that you would on YouTube. Now, granted, there's a lot of weirdos on YouTube, but there's also a lot of very interesting people on YouTube to communicate with. There's a lot of interesting people that I want my videos to go to because I love to have conversation with people who like to have interesting discourse on these issues, on the subject matter that I like to talk about. And on BitChute, when you post up a video, even if you're like critical of the libs, they're gonna find a way to paint you as a Jew loving cock or something like that. Like literally, BitChute is the type of place where nobody is satisfied unless you're literally waving a swastika. I am not exaggerating this. Like, it is a right wing cesspool. It's a national socialist fascist cesspool. If I do a video saying, "Hey, like, this is why libs are bad," and blah blah blah, and then I show like this is what communism did, and I show the evils of communism, and even if I point to the fact that there were many Jews who joined the communists in Poland, and they even murdered civilians during the Second World War, and blah blah blah, and I can talk about Katyn, and then within that video I say something like, "And the Soviets had an alliance with the Nazis, and then together they were butchering people in Poland." If I if and even if I just say that in passing, Like every comment underneath the video will be something like "You're a cuck, you're a cuck, you're a cuck. You don't even know this. You don't." It's like they literally want you to wave the swastika around, and that's the problem with BitChute. Now, what's interesting though is if I criticize Ukraine and if I criticize Russia, what happens is that the people who are sympathetic to Ukraine, they're not satisfied either. They won't be satisfied unless you're literally waving the Ukrainian flag. And you could even be screaming Slava Ukraina, Smert Lachom, praise Bandera, and kill the Poles or whatever, and death to the enemies. And people will be okay with that because it's Russia and Russia's evil. And so one thing that is one type of benefit that we can get out of this whole situation is that the Ukraine conflict has given an opportunity for people to expose themselves. Truly, I believe this. Hold on a second, guys. There we go. It's given an opportunity for people to expose who they are, to actually expose themselves. People that you would never think would express any sort of sympathy to fascist. You're seeing them do it. It's insane. Like I know a guy who I've known him for years. We used to talk all the time, and he was in the army, got out of the army, and now he tells me that his army friends are in Ukraine, literally helping Azov. And I'm like, wait, what? Hold on a second. I had to stop him there. I said, wait, you're telling me that your friends are in Ukraine, working with Azov? He's like, yeah. And I said, dude, why are your friends working with Nazis? That's insane. And he says, well, because we're dealing with an existential crisis of extermination of a people. And I said, so if you have to work with Nazis to prevent an extermination of a people, that means that country has a serious Nazi issue if its existence depends on them. And he didn't like that. He disagreed with me on that. But the reality is, him telling me that he has friends who are working with Azov and he's okay with that is like him telling me I have army friends in Iraq and they're helping ISIS. There's no difference really. One it says Slava Ukraina and one says Allahu Akbar. And by the way, Slava Ukraina is the new Allahu Akbar. It is. It's the new Allahu Akbar. When the Syrian civil war first began and Senator John McCain was just kissing up to the rebels, the Syrian rebels, and supporting arming them and giving them anti-tank weapons and all that, I was amongst the first people online saying this is insanity. Most people on the internet were saying praise Syria, good for the Syrian people. I even had a British journalist write me. This happened back in, I want to say 2011 or 2012. I remember there was a British journalist who wrote me saying, Assad is going down. He's going down. Get over it, Theodore. He actually wrote this to me. I forget his name, but he was some Anglo guy. And I remember there was a video of, I think it was a Syrian fighter jet that was shot down by some US-backed rebels. And these rebels were screaming, Allahu Akbar, or whatever. And somebody asked John McCain about it. They said, hey, John McCain, these are your guys. These are the people that you support. And they're screaming Allahu Akbar watching the Syrian jet going down. And what McCain said? He said, oh, that's like the equivalent of somebody here saying God bless you or hallelujah. He said something like that. And John McCain went to Ukraine during the year of Maidan. And there he was with Mr. Tihanabuk, the leader of Svoboda, which is like one of the Nazi parties in Ukraine, one of the far-right parties in Ukraine. And there he was, hanging out with Mr. Tihanabuk. And I believe Tihanabuk was one of the Ukrainians who went to Chechnya to fight the Russians. He probably took part in some beheadings, or at least watched some beheadings of Russian soldiers. And if you guys ever want to see brutality, and this is for the people who hate Russians, right? You hate Russian soldiers. You think Russian soldiers are all murderers. Go watch a video of the Dagestani massacre, where you'll see these North Caucasus Mujahideen terrorists literally butchering Russian soldiers as if they're chickens. And the Russian soldiers are screaming. One guy is literally screaming for his mother, and the Chechens are laughing at this. Watch that video and then tell me that these Russian soldiers are just evil murderers and Slava Ukraina. And you know what? Slava Chechnya. I want to just scream that while you're at it. And the thing is that these very Chechen Mujahideen monsters are in Ukraine right now, and they're not fighting for the Russian side. They're fighting for the Ukrainian side. Oh, but Ted, there's Chechens who are fighting on the Russian side. Yeah, those are Russian soldiers. Chechnya, for those of you who don't know, is a part of Russia. It's a province of the Russian Federation. And of course, you're going to have Chechen soldiers in the war in Ukraine because Chechens are Russian citizens. It would be like saying, there's this crazy place in America called the Bayou, and there's a bunch of soldiers in Iraq from the Bayou. I mean, there's like Bayou fighters. Yeah, those are American soldiers. And I have nothing against the Bayou. In some ways, I envy the people in the Bayou because they're so self-sufficient. So, of course, you're going to have Chechens fighting for the Russians. They're Russian citizens. But you have Chechen Mujahideen who are fighting against the Russians, not because they were forced to, not because they're drafted, because they want to, because they want to resume the jihad against Russian soldiers, and they want to find any opportunity they can to kill Russian soldiers, be it by bullets or be it by beheading. And there they are helping the Slava Ukraina crowd. Slava Ukraina, Herodium Slava, Smert Lachom. Yeah, okay. It's horrific, guys. It's horrific. The reality is that Ukraine has a fascist problem. And if you want to deny that, then you can deny reality. But all I know is that the neoliberals, the libs in America, were making a huge deal about tiki torches in the United States. Back in 2017, there was this pro-Trump rally where all these Trump supporters were holding up tiki torches and they were screaming, "Jews will not replace us." And the liberal media establishment in this country was losing their minds over it. Oh my God, the far right, the far right, the far right, the far right, the rise of the far right is coming up, the far right, the far right, the far right. And he had all these British, BBC. These are members of the far right, the far right, the far right. And we have what? How many? You can see videos online of literally thousands and thousands of Ukrainians in torchlight ceremonies saying death to the enemies of Ukraine and praise Stepan Bandera. And nothing to see here. No Nazi problem here. Oh no, there's no element within the Ukrainian society that loves Stepan Bandera. No, that doesn't exist. Oh, absolutely not. Now I'm going to hear about how Stepan Bandera is a complicated figure and it's complicated and we don't really understand it. It's complicated. That's how you know when somebody's being dishonest in a discussion. When you bring to them specific points. And I've said this numerous times on this channel. When you bring up a specific or when you bring up multiple specifics to prove your position or to prove to substantiate your observation, the person who's being dishonest with you is going to try to generalize everything. They're going to try to generalize everything, or they're going to try to smoke screen you in some way. And one way that they smoke screen you is by saying it's complicated. It's complicated, very, very complicated. And I've noticed this little strategy, and it doesn't really work with people who see through it. But I remember hearing this strategy for the first time when I was in high school. I remember I had this teacher. He was a crazy far left lunatic. I think he was from California or something. Crazy. You know how some people they get so far left they look retarded? Have you seen these types of people before? I have. You have some people who are so left wing that they are unhinged. And when you talk to them, it's like you're talking to somebody who needs to be in a psych ward. You don't know when they're going to blow up. They're not fully. It's almost like their brains aren't fully functioning. Maybe it's a mixture of drugs and I don't know, drugs and believing in the stuff they believe in, but their brains are fried. And this was one of the guys. And he said, "Okay, class, I want you guys to," and he was a younger guy. He was probably in his 40s at the time. But he said, "I want you guys to write something about what, in your opinion, would help an economy. It could be any economy. It could be the American economy. It could be the economy of any country. What would you do to help that economy?" So I wrote an article about why America should drill its own oil. And I still believe this, by the way. I think America should drill its own. I don't see why it shouldn't drill its own oil and be self-sufficient in that regard. Remove a lot of the regulations on the oil companies and allow gas to be cheaper and just be self-sufficient. I don't see why that's a problem. And I did an article saying I think America should drill its own oil and use its own oil as opposed to helping Saudi Arabia. And I gave some examples as to how helping Saudi Arabia actually helps terrorism, and it's not good. It's not good. And he immediately stopped me and he said, I'm not going to tolerate this in my class, Theodore. I no, I'm not going to do this. And I'm like, why? And we're talking about like what America should do to help itself, right? Like, I would rather have American money go into the American economy as opposed to just like money going to Saudi Arabia where it can be used for terrorism. And he's like, it's more complicated than that. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, it's very complicated. I'm like, actually, no, it's not. It's pretty simple. And he's like, no, it's very complicated. Very complicated. He said it like 3 or 4 times. Very complicated. Very complicated. Very, very complicated. I'm like, okay, explain to me how it's complicated. You can't explain it to me. Okay. And I remember literally sitting my ass down without even like, I couldn't even give my full presentation. So I sat my ass down and some guy gets up there. Some guy gets up there and some Mexican guy. And he gives his opinion as to what would help the Mexican economy. And he said, "I think what we should do to help the Mexican economy is we need to put this guy literally said this. He says, "We need to put a tax on all of the taco truck owners. All the damn taco trucks on the side of the road, we need to put a tax on all of them. Mexican government, the government should put a tax on all the taco street stand owners. And the problem is when we don't put a tax on them, they put trash all over the floor. They trash the entire floor. They mess up the streets." And this dude gives an entire presentation about why the Mexican government should tax small business owners because they trash the streets. And that's okay. Now, I don't have an issue with what he said. I mean, if you want to do that to clean the streets, by all means. But you can't stop me from giving my presentation because I simply said I think American dollars should go to drilling its own oil as opposed to going to Saudi Arabia, which would help terrorism. You can't stop me for saying that, but then allow a speech that says I think we should tax all taco stand owners because they're trashing the streets. It's like it seems that trashing the streets is worse than giving money to terrorists. But yes, I have seen the insanity of every political spectrum from the beginning. Okay. I'm not the Mexican is a communist. He probably was. Speedy Gonzalez, that's how Mexicans literally talk. That's how a lot of them talk. Yeah. But the whole and here's the thing, guys, and I just want to tell you guys this. If YouTube takes me down, and I'm trying my best to keep myself within the rule set, within the terms of service. If YouTube takes me down, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to become a Voknik. Okay. I'm going to go on VK, which is the Russian Facebook, and I'm going to upload all my videos. So I have a VK account. It's Theodore Schubot. You can find it on VK.com. V as in Victor, K as in Kmart. VK.com. Go look it up. It's the Russian Facebook. It's actually a lot cooler than Facebook because you can meet all sorts of interesting people there. And I will just upload my videos on VK on the Russian Facebook, and maybe I can get a better, probably a more intelligent. I don't want to say you guys aren't you guys are intelligent people, but I'll probably get a more interesting audience as opposed to the Americans who pop up and they're like, you hate all Ukrainians, oh, you're a communist. Like, I don't want to deal with those maniacs. I don't like that kind of behavior. One thing I've noticed about Eastern European people, and I could be completely wrong about this, but every Eastern European person I've talked to, even if they disagree with me, they're actually pretty respectful about it. Americans are the types of people that they'll tell you the disagreement, and then when you try to explain to them why they're wrong, they'll say some crazy shit to you, like I'm going to destroy you in this debate. I'm not even going to use half my brain to destroy you. Like, dude, get off your freaking high horse there, buddy. Oh, hello, Kasha. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna upload my I think I'm just gonna upload my if YouTube takes me down. I think I'm just gonna start uploading on VK already. I think I should upload it on video on YouTube and then just on VK, and then maybe I can expand my audience better. have a more global outreach. The teacher was probably more offended at you used the word of terror. I think that's what it was. It's so crazy, and you know how when people say like some people are so far left, they'll eventually go full circle and they'll meet with the right wing in some way, and then some people are so right wing that they'll go full circle and then somehow they'll like overlap with the left. I've heard people mock this observation, but I will say that I believe it's true to a great extent. I believe it's true. Um, because so for example, I got into an argument with a student one time, and he was telling me that he disagreed with the bombing of Germany during the Second World War. And this crazy far left teacher, the guy who didn't let me finish my presentation, he comes up to me and he's like, "What's the argument about, guys?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Could you?" And I'm thinking this dude's liberal, right? There's like, why would he want to side with Nazis for? He would not sympathize with the Third Reich. And I'm like, "Could you please tell this guy why the bombing of Germany was necessary?" And he's like, "Actually, Theodore, I don't think it was necessary at all. In fact, America has always told people that they believe in freedom of religion. They should have allowed the German people to hold to the beliefs that they wanted to. If that meant Nazism, then who cares?" And I'm like, okay, I'm literally in the twilight zone. I have seen it all. I've seen a man who is a complete lefty go full circle and actually tell me that a country should, if it wants to be Nazi, that's okay. Yeah. Does Russian Facebook have English speaking people? Yes, it does, actually. Mainly Eastern European speakers, but yes, I have seen a good number of English speaking videos. Spain is very polarized. Look at Catalonia. Absolutely. Absolutely. I am considering NATO expansionism into the east. Yes, I'm going into the VK world. I am going into the east, my friends. Divine soldier in the house. I think it's only the U.S. and Canada which are super polarized like that. The Ukraine's a very polarized country, actually. I actually saw a video. It's crazy. I saw a video recently. I actually saw it today. It was of some Ukrainian nationalists burning the Polish flag. And I sent it to my Polish friend. I said, "What do you think about this?" And he said, "Some people are saying that these are like Russian operatives pretending to be Ukrainians to try to piss the Poles off." But I don't know. I've seen some pretty crazy videos. What do you think about the Pope's consecration of Russia? I think I don't really agree with it because okay, guys, here's the problem. And how long have I been on here? Okay. It's not beer time yet. So here's the problem with this way of thinking. So there was a consecration of Russia that took place. Communism falls not too long afterwards. The Berlin Wall, all that stuff happens. Soviet Union is no more. All of a sudden, Russians are going by the droves to church. They're being baptized. Atheism begins to decline, and Christianity has this surge in popularity. Eastern Orthodox Christianity. And I've seen this in Russia for years. I've seen this going all the way back to 2014. NATO tries to push the LGBT into Russia, and and the Russians say we don't want it. And they try to do LGBT rallies. The Russians they squash these rallies physically, literally. They squash them. They get rid of. They stop them. I never had an issue with this. I never had an issue with Russians going against LGBT rallies. In fact, I got a lot of flack from people when I used to express this opinion. I even got into a full blown 1 hour long debate with a crazy pastor by the name of Michael Brown, who's a lunatic, in my opinion. And Michael Brown had a substantial audience. He had quite a big audience years ago, but now I don't think his audience is as big as it used to be. But I debated him back in 2000, early 2016 over this issue. He asked me if I supported what the Russians are doing, and I said, "You damn right I am. You damn right I support it. Absolutely, sir." I was absolutely unapologetic in that debate. And I think that's one of the best mindsets you should have when you're debating somebody who has a fanatically antithetical position towards yours. I'm talking about in the area of morality and religious principle, I think you should have an absolutely emphatic position, and you should state it without apology. And that's what I did in that debate. You can watch it; it's still up on YouTube. But I remember people like Ted Cruz was waving the American flag, saying, "Oh, look, the evil Russians! Look, discrimination! Look, oh my goodness, awful, evil." And I saw how NATO was using LGBT to was using Sodom really to enforce its imperialism. And people will say things like everything's about money. I don't really see I mean, a lot of things are about money, but I don't really see how the LGBT is about money. Like, what does it have to do with money? Why do you try to force it on other countries? Why do you try to push it on other countries? That this goes beyond money. There's an ideology here. There's an agenda. And years ago, I called this agenda the imperialism of delusion. And I said that America was trying to impose Sodom on the rest of the world. And I call this the imperialism of delusion because ultimately it is spreading delusion. I mean, if you believe that a man can become a woman, that's delusional. And I don't need, and this is one thing I hate about these sorts of debates when it comes to like trans stuff is like my position on the trans issue is okay. What was the guy born as? It was born male. Okay, he's a guy. Okay, what he did was mutilation, and he's more than likely mentally ill. Okay, I don't see why we need to sort of rationalize this behavior, or we should make it into some sort of scientific phenomena. It's delusion is what it is. And if you believe that a man is equal to a woman, if you believe that a man marrying another man is the same as a man marrying a woman, that is delusion. That's insanity. The trans ideology is really the inevitable escalation from pushing the idea that two men getting married is the same as a man and a woman being married. And I saw how the Russians resisted this. I saw how the Russians resisted this with this zeal and with this ardor and with this indomitable spirit that I have never seen. And I saw it. I saw it. I saw it. It was beautiful. It was beautiful to see people willing to fight this. Unlike in America, where our idea of combating Sodom is literally going to Chick-fil-A and buying fried chicken because Chick-fil-A is an evangelical business and that's how we do it. Like in Russia, they will have the priests with the holy water and the incense, and you will see these Russian guys who are very militant and they're willing to confront these agents of Sodom with such energy and enthusiasm. It was a really beautiful thing to see. But there was America. Oh, look at evil Russia. And I'm thinking, and then I look to the Vatican. I look to the Vatican and I see how the Vatican has become a full-blown supporter of Sodom. Like it's not even people say, "Oh, the Vatican is split." The Vatican, like, it's not even that. It's the Vatican has become a full-blown supporter of Sodom. And people, the Catholic world is saying, "Oh, look, Russia has to be consecrated. Russia has to be consecrated. Russia has to be consecrated." To what? Well, to be a part of the Vatican. So you want Russia, which is fighting Sodom, you want Russia's Christians who are fighting Sodom to join an institution that has literally been taken over by Sodom. In my mind, Russia doesn't need to be consecrated. If anything, it already was consecrated, and if anything, the Russians need to consecrate the Vatican. So that's my position. Syrians might blow you up with a Ukrainian, you might marry one. Apparently, you never heard of the Volin massacre. Putin came in defense of J.K. Rowling against the LGBTs in one interview. I didn't know that. Our country will never become that. I think the Russian legal stance is an excellent compromise. No public display on the streets. Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that. Leftists produce nothing, so they get their money from corporations. Yeah, the 420 YouTube channel, I'm familiar with it. I had a friend with on VK who was to be a friend, but turned out she was trying to scam me. Oh, damn. Yeah, you have those. Are you familiar with the Bloody Sunday of 19? I feel like you've told me about this before. Big Goju. I'm looking this up. I'm gonna guess something to do with like Poles that killed people. Polish reaction. Yep, I was right. I knew you were gonna pull this one off. No, I don't support killing. I don't support this. People do this all the time. If I talk about like, oh look, Poles were butchered like chickens, et cetera, et cetera. You're like, did you know that Poles killed people too? It's like, well, I don't support that. I mean, people think that they get you like in a gotcha. Ortho Christos, my VK name is Theodore Shubat. Ukrainian people escaping war are genuine refugees, mainly women and children. Watch. Middle Eastern people aren't genuine refugees. Watch. While men stayed behind to fight. This is different from Middle Eastern men who and children behind. How do you know they left their wives and children? I've seen plenty of Syrian women and children who have gone to Europe. I've seen plenty of videos of Syrian like and for one thing, if a woman is going to go by herself, here's what another thing I always find amazing is if a refugee, and plus there's also Ukrainian men who have escaped as well. It's not like they all want to sit there and fight. But if you're, hundreds of thousands of Syrians have died in the war. Of course there would be refugees. I don't know why we're acting as if this is like a shock. And why would you want to? I don't know. Okay, Chuba, what was your point? Look at the way this moment was used by the juror. Oh, okay, hold on. Did I? I think I jumped to conclusions too quickly. The Polish Institute, et cetera, et cetera. German propaganda heavily exploited the events. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, definitely. I'm sorry for I because I've gotten so much of this before. I just automatically assumed that you were doing that. I shouldn't have done that. I apologize. Polish violence against the German minority. Yep. And you're seeing the same thing with the refugees. Oh, look, Syrians did this. Look, Syrians did that. Yeah, if hundreds of thousands of Americans were dying in a war within their borders, you don't think you don't think there would be Americans who would be fleeing to Canada? You don't think there would be? I don't know. The difference is, so you're saying a Syrian guy doesn't have a right to be a refugee? So if there were Ukrainian refugees who were male, you would say, oh, those are cowards? There's and for another thing, if a woman is fleeing by herself with her children, she is completely open to being raped, exploited, all these things. And I mean, why wouldn't you want men there? Of course, you would want men there to prevent things like that from taking place. I'm pretty certain that if it was just all women, they would say, "Look, the men, they just let their women leave. Like, where are the men?" But like, if the men go with them, they're like, they leave their country. Oh, it's like you can't win with these people. Let's see here. Oh, hold on, Mr. MH. You just changed the subject. We just talked about if it happened in America, then people would be fleeing. Now you're saying that, well, they wouldn't be fleeing to Saudi Arabia. Huh? Change of subject there, which tells me that you're dishonest. So I'm not really interested in having this discussion with you. It's like, you don't think American men would be fleeing if there were literally hundreds of thousands of people being butchered in this country? Yeah, but they wouldn't be going to Saudi Arabia. I don't even have to explain why that's a retarded response. I don't even need to explain that. Their culture is closer in lineage. Yeah. And that's why Ukrainians butchered Poles, and that's why Germans butchered other white people, because they looked the same, right? They looked the same, right? They all looked like each other. They looked similar to one another. So that of course, they would kill one another, right? I mean, Russians and Ukrainians look similar. They speak a similar language. I mean, we've seen people in Donbass killing each other, and they look alike. Why are they killing each other? Because they look alike, right? That makes perfect sense. Just hope everything turns out peacefully. Hold on, let me get a drink, guys. Okay, hold on. Okay, guys, we're going back to the Netherlands with the Heineken. I was looking for some Eastern European beer. The only Eastern European beer that they have, it comes from Czech Republic, and they say it tastes similar to like Polish beer. Smirnoff is what? Like, where does Smirnoff come from? It sounds Slavic. Smirnoff. Is Smirnoff considered a beer? Yes, it is. I should try that one day. I haven't tried Smirnoff. Where does it come from? From Canada. Who created it? Pyotr Arsenovich Smirnov founded his vodka distillery. Oh, so it is kind of like a Russian. I should try that out just to try it out. Anyway, here goes nothing. This is the Dutch Heineken. Delicious. I was talking to a Polish friend of mine, and we were talking about the whole thing with Ukrainian refugees. And when you have a society that worships a man who butchered Poles. See, here's my question to the people who say, well, Syrians are different, Ukrainians are better. Okay. Here's my question. If your neighbor worships or reveres a man who butchered your people, would you say the same thing that you would say about Syrian refugees in regards to your neighbor? Would you give them that same incredulity, right? Would you give them that same would you have the same distrust? So you say, well, we don't want to bring Syrians in because they could be Muslim terrorists or whatever. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough, right? I'm not really going to argue against that because it's true. Like there's definitely an Islamic jihadist problem in the Middle East. And when you bring in people from the Middle East, there's always going to be a risk that you're bringing in a terrorist or some kind of or a potential terrorist, right? But if your neighbor, let's say, is not Middle Eastern, not Muslim, but if your neighbor reveres someone who murdered your people 7 decades ago, would you have that same mistrust? See, and that's the observation that I'm trying to make. Is it wrong to support Russia's war? No, I don't think it's wrong. They're killing each other because they're still killing each other. They look alike. I mean, the people who are fighting and who have been fighting in Donbass, I mean, they have their own ideology. It's not like somebody told them, like, oh yeah, go fight these people. They have their own sentiments. They have their own convictions. The Donbassians believe that they want to be a part of Russia. They want to be under Russia. They're proud Russians. They don't like how the Ukrainians are imposing themselves on them. They don't like how Ukrainians have been trying to purge out the Russian language from Ukraine. Like they don't like any of these things, and they're fighting against that. That's what they're fighting against. They're fighting against you. Right now, I'm reading this book. Okay, I have it right here. It's called "Through Times of Trouble" by a Russian scholar named Anna Matvika. Anna Matvika. She talks about the different aspects of the Donbassian war, and she says it's not like, and she addresses this issue because she says it's very common for people to say, oh, the reason why this war has been happening is because of like big power holders and globalists. And she says, like, even if you want to take that position, you can't just reject the fact that all the people fighting in Donbass are fighting with a conviction. The Donbassians, the people of Luhansk and Donetsk, they don't like Ukrainianization. At the end of the day, this is a battle. This has been a war against Ukrainianization. And the Ukrainians have been pushing for Ukrainianization. They want the Ukrainian language to be dominant. They don't want the Russian language to have any sort of preponderating position or any sort of primary position. They don't want the Russian like I mean, there was a time when Russian films were literally dubbed in Ukrainian because they didn't want to present the Russian language. Now, and that was obligatory. Now, they stopped that mandate in what I think it was in 2011 or something. They got rid of that mandate because of the uproar that it caused. But nonetheless, that was a sign of Ukrainianization. It's real. Read my replies. What are you saying? You said that what? You said that okay, you would hate your that's not my point though. My point is these people are saying they're accepting Ukrainians because they look like Poles and they have a similar culture. Okay, granted. And they don't want Syrians because Syrians could be terrorists. Granted. But if your neighbor reveres somebody who butchered your people, wouldn't you have that same sort of distrust for those people that you would have for Syrians? That's my question. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you should take in Syrian refugees. I'm not saying that. What I said is what I said. That's what I'm arguing. Would you consider someone who flew on a tourist visa to Belarus and attempted to enter EU illegally a refugee? Poland has that problem. We're talking about two different things. You're referring to the Lukashenko policy that was going on last year. I'm talking about what happened in 2015. Different story. And the thing is that those Afghans, they were refugees. I mean, the Taliban took over. Yeah. Wouldn't you want to escape Afghanistan if the Taliban took over your country? A lot of these guys were Iraqis. Look at Iraq. Do you want to live there? Look at Syria. Do you want to live there? They went in there illegally. Okay. They are people who would do illegal things to survive. And this is another thing. People will try to rationalize certain decisions under the guise of a state of emergency, right? Fighting a state of emergency. Well, we have to work with these Nazis. We have to arm these Nazis because it's a state of emergency. We have to help them because we got to fight communism. And people are willing to permit evil or to support it in the name of some kind of huge catastrophe that is ongoing. But when it comes to illegal immigration, all of a sudden you guys, I'm not saying you're doing this, but a lot of you guys become like puritanical, like, oh, no matter what, if someone is trying to illegally cross into the country, that's it. There's no way that person can be a refugee. It's evil. It's destructive. It's like, well, if you were in a war-torn country where civilians are being butchered and you wanted to get out of there, would you be thinking about some violation by crossing a border? Or would you actually try to get in there and see what best you can make out of it? I mean, would you be willing to cross a border to get your family out of a war zone, even if it was illegal? Is that the worst crime that somebody could really commit? For one thing, in America at least, crossing the border is illegally is not a crime. It's a violation, but it's not considered a crime. Um, yeah, of course. But now we're talking about different things. Mexico has Syrian refugees as well as Uruguay. Okay, amazing. I was trying to cut a deal among Chopo and you and others as a solution to Ukrainian problem. Alex Yo-Yo. Theodore makes a point. Yeah, somebody can see it. I'm glad. If the Russian people in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn, want self-determination and don't like the local government, should they be free to join Russia? No, obviously not. And I understand why Ukraine is fighting Donbass, because they don't want a separatist state within their country, obviously. At the same time, in the Russian perspective, it's, well, Ukraine was a part of Russia. Well, Ukraine was a part of the Soviet Union. I actually did a video talking about this, addressing this very issue. Like, Ukraine was a part of us. Those Russians were there because of some policy going all the way back to the Tsar and all the way back to the Soviet Union. Yeah. For one thing, Brighton Bridge was never part of Russia. So there's no comparison. No comparison. I agree with you. There's a bias against refugees of color. Yep, there definitely is. Chile is very well off. Argentina. Why can't Argentinians and Chileans be as rich as North Americans despite being white? Isn't like the wealthiest parts of Brazil all the places that are inhabited by Germans? Most real refugees flee to the neighboring country. Well, if you're Syrian, why the hell would you want to go to Iraq? That's one thing. And secondly, many of them went to Turkey, and Turkey absorbed, I want to say, most of the refugees. And then from Turkey, I mean, if you were staying in Turkey, there was a good chance you would be exploited. There's tremendous racism against Syrians in Turkey, so I can understand why they would want to go to Europe. If you go to Bulgaria, you're not very welcomed in Bulgaria, so you just keep going into where you would be most tolerated, which is understandable. It's like no one's ever been raped a Ukrainian refugee. Could you send me the link on this story, please? Send me the link on that. Man allegedly rapes Ukrainian refugee in Poland. Who for allegedly raping a 19-year-old girl. Okay. And if I showed you Ukrainian refugees burning the flag of Poland, would it be okay if Poland would say no Ukrainian refugees? You would be okay with that? Are Syrian refugees still a thing? I mean, we really don't really hear about them as much. No. Do you believe the Nazis in Ukraine are a bigger threat than Putin, Russia? If so, why? I mean, they're not a threat to me. I'm not in Ukraine. They would be a threat to Poland. Are they a bigger threat? Which one is it? They're not a threat to me. So that cancels that right out. And I don't think Russia is a threat to me either, because I don't think Russia's interested in going to war with the US. So with that aside, I still believe that the Azov battalion, the ultranationalists of Russia, or the ultranationalists of Ukraine are worse than the Russian government. Yes, I believe that, just given their history. Shubat peace treaty. When? What are you guys fighting over? They go where the best social benefits are. Well, Ukrainian refugees are getting good benefits as well. I mean, British families are being paid hundreds of pounds for each refugee that they take in. Could I then say that, look, Ukrainians are going to England? And for one thing, a lot of Ukrainians have gone to England. And England is not a neighboring country. It's not. It's nowhere near Eastern Europe. It's up there in the north. Yeah, closer to Scandinavia than anything else. So I guess Ukrainians are leaving to where they're being accepted. Why would you, as a refugee, go to some place that you're not accepted? Why would you want to do that? Why would they? I mean, the whole idea of a refugee is a person who is seeking refuge. So in seeking refuge, you would be getting some kind of benefit. So I don't really see why that's a bad thing. Britain is giving benefits to Ukrainian refugees. I'm pretty certain that Poland is giving benefits to Ukrainian refugees. I don't see a problem with that. For some reason, when it comes to Syrians getting benefits, that's a bad thing. But Ukrainians get it. That's fine. So there's your answer. Finnish people are scared to death. Yeah, I know, you're right next to each other. You're afraid that Russia's going to invade you. I think one thing that Russia is doing is it's exposing all of the Nazis in Europe. Like, every Nazi in Europe is coming out of the closet now. Like, hey, miss us yet? So, I mean, in a way, we're kind of seeing the many fascist inclinations within the European society. What are your thoughts on the coming energy and food shortages? I think, and this could be like, I can't fully prove this. I can't fully prove this, but this is what I believe. I believe that globalization as we know it is dying. It's dying. The global world order, the global world order as we have become accustomed to, is dying. And, for a long time, America was very self sufficient. America produced, I want to say, like 75% of the world's food. America was the breadbasket of the world. America was very self sufficient. I'll give you a little story. This is how I would explain it. I like to grow food. One of my greatest passions, after researching and writing and learning about things, my greatest passion is growing food. I love growing food, fruits, vegetables, anything that I can grow. I want to grow it. And even though I don't have a whole lot of land, I still use what I have to grow food. Years ago, back in, I want to say, 2008, I visited a guy who was working with us at the time, and he was some East Coast Jewish fella. And this guy lived on 5 acres. Now, I don't live on 5 acres, but this guy did. I visited his house and I noticed that his entire 5 acre property was covered with grass and some shade trees. And I said to him, how much land do you live on? He said, I live on 5 acres. And I said, why don't you try to grow fruit trees? I mean, you live in Pennsylvania. You can grow apples to your heart's desire. And he said, that sounds like work. That's what he told me. And so he would much rather pay thousands of dollars for some landscaping company to cut grass than to actually utilize and transform his property into a huge garden, which is exactly, I mean, I would at least garden out an acre if I were him. America has adopted this mentality. For many years, America was the breadbasket of the world. And then it said, well, why should we grow this when we can just get it from some other country and we can make it cheaper? Now, I understand why people would do that. But it's not exactly the most viable policy because of things such as what is happening now between Russia and Ukraine. Russia has invaded Ukraine. Russia is at war with Ukraine, and America is saying, we don't like this. We're going to put sanctions. But Russia is the number one producer of the world's wheat. Ukraine is the number 5 producer of the world's wheat. If this war continues on and deepens the destruction of Ukraine, that could have a huge effect on the world's consumption of wheat. It could have a huge effect on the availability of wheat. If we are putting sanctions on Russia and we're saying, F Russia, we're not going to buy your stuff, blah, 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 that is going to what? It's going to affect our accessibility to wheat in the sense that it's going to drive prices up. And you drive the price of wheat, you drive the price of bread, you drive the price of a bunch of stuff that we use wheat in beer, whatever we use wheat in. And so America has the capacity to grow everything. We have the capacity to grow tremendous amounts of wheat for a fairly cheap price, given the fact that part of our agricultural policy in the United States is to subsidize wheat farmers and corn farmers and soybean farmers. A couple of years ago, I called up a local wheat farmer and I asked him how much would it cost if I were to buy wheat directly from you. And the price was so insanely cheap, he was practically giving it away for free. He was willing to give me basically a truckload of wheat for, I think it was like $1,000 or something. I mean, it was like ridiculous to have enough wheat to last for so many years, maybe even less than that. Like, he was practically giving it away for free, and he was literally willing to come to my house and deliver the wheat by a truckload. It's insane. Now, he didn't do it. We found a different way of getting the wheat that we wanted, because it would be too difficult to get a truck and this and that. But nonetheless, my point is that this was a local wheat grower who was selling wheat for very, very cheap price, very, very cheap price. Maybe a dollar every. What was the price? It was like you would get. I mean, in America, if you buy locally grown wheat directly from a mill, I'll give you just an anecdotal example. You can buy around 50 pounds of wheat for about $15. That's not bad. 50 pounds of wheat goes a long ways. And you can grind your own wheat and make your own bread with it. And you can boil the wheat and you can make a porridge out of it. And it's pretty good, actually. In the West Bank, they make a delicious meal of wheat, wheat grains, lamb that's boiled, and then they add I think like garbanzo beans to it. It's really, really good with tomatoes. It's really tasty, actually. Um, so America has the capacity to grow its own wheat. So I think eventually what will happen is people will say, well, why, like, if we depend on these other countries for these very essential foods, very essential ingredients, and our food security is jeopardized because of something that is happening in those countries that we rely on for whatever food product we get from them, then we should just grow it ourselves as opposed to relying on other countries. And I think that's what's going to happen in the future. I think America is going to become more self-sufficient. I could be completely wrong. I hope I'm not wrong, because I want that to happen. I don't like this idea of, going to the store one day and the weed is cheap, and then a year later it's gone up the roof because some war has happened. I think that's insane, and it doesn't help food security. And I think this is one of the reasons why Russia isn't so concerned about the sanctions. I mean, there are Russian people who are concerned about it, but I think for the most part, Russians will be fine. They're going to survive because they can produce so much food in their own country. Um, Muammar Gaddafi wrote 2 books, and I read both of them. And in these books, he sort of expresses he expresses his wisdom. And he said something that always stuck to me. He said that all you really need at the end of the day is milk and dates. That's all you need. And Muammar Gaddafi was a man who came from the desert. He came from that Bedouin culture, and that's what Bedouins eat. They eat dates, and they drink goat milk, and they drink tea, and that's how they survive. I mean, you don't really need a whole lot to survive as a society. But I think America is going to become more self-sufficient. Gas going up, that really hurts Americans' pocketbooks and their wallets, and I understand that. And Americans, I think, are going to be pushing more and more for self-sufficiency when it comes to oil. America has tons and tons of oil. We have so much oil from Texas and from Alaska. We don't need to get oil from other countries. What's the point of that? The only reason why, and this is what I truly believe, I believe that America gets things from other countries for 2 reasons. One, because it's cheaper, and secondly, because we can control other countries by buying their stuff. Like, hey, we buy your stuff. If you don't do this, we're going to sanction you. Hey, Guatemala, we buy your bananas. If you nationalize the bananas, then we're going to bomb your country. And yes, that actually happened in the 1950s. So I think that this is the bottom line. more and more people are getting into the homesteading life. That's the thing. Like, you're seeing more and more Americans buying land, getting into homesteading, and this is one of the benefits that came about from COVID. You know, when COVID popped up, everyone's like, "Stay home." Oh my God! You go to the store, it's like you're in the middle of a doomsday, post-apocalyptic movie. All the shelves are empty. There's no meat on the thing. The eggs are gone. The bread is gone. Everything is gone. No sugar. No. I mean, it was insane. It was completely insane what happened when COVID first broke out. And what did people do? They said, like, hey, food security is a serious thing. I don't think people were really thinking about food security that much, but it got more and more people to think about food security. Like, hey, food security is a serious thing. We need to be focusing on this. Oh, let's get some chickens. Let's put some chickens in our backyard. Let's get our eggs from our backyard as opposed to having to go to the store. Let's grow some vegetables. Let's put some fruit trees in. People became more self-sufficient, and that became something of a trend. That trend is growing. You're seeing that trend growing more and more. Tractor Supply. Tractor Supply is a big business in America that sells. They sell like chickens. They sell baby chicks. They sell chicken feed, feed for farm animals, cattle, horses, things like that, goats. And they made bank during COVID. They made tons of money during COVID because more and more people were getting into that lifestyle. And I have always gardened. Like, I've been gardening since 2013, gardening for a while. And when COVID broke out, I got chickens. I said, you know what? I've been growing vegetables and for a while, growing figs for a while, but let me take it a step above. Let me get chicks. Let me now get a source of protein for my backyard, as opposed to just getting vitamins and fiber from vegetables that I would grow. Let me get some. Let me get a cheap source of protein for my backyard as well. And so, yeah. Of course, you guys are arguing about whatever. Gaddafi is truly a shining light on how to organize a country. Yeah, Gaddafi was a cool guy. Tools needed to do things, and it to be made here instead of China. The prescription meds being caused. Yep, that's another thing. The most difficult thing Western citizens will be facing in the near future is forcefully transforming their lifestyles. It will be an abrupt wake-up call. Yep, I agree. But a lot of people are willing to do it, and that's what I like about it. I think that you can usually find positive things in every negative situation. Usually you can find positive things in a negative situation. COVID was bad. 1 million Americans died. I mean, we had the death rate here was very, very distinct. And but people were forced to realize the importance of food security. How do we better ourselves food wise? Gardening, chickens, fruit trees. There's a reason why Russians have dachas. Russian families commonly have something called a dacha. A dacha is a summer house. It's a house that you go to. So you live in the city, you work in the city, but then in the summertime, you and the family, you go to the countryside in the summer, and you live in what is called a dacha. And usually, I guess your grandmother, your babushka, takes care of the dacha. Correct me on that if I'm wrong. And in the dachas, people grow cabbage, they grow carrots, they grow beets, they grow apples, they grow pears, they grow these things. The Russian accent sounds almost like a deep Ohio accent. It kind of makes you wonder where that came from. So they grow apples, they grow pears, they grow these things. There's a reason why Russians have dachas, because Russian people have gone through famine. Russian people have gone through many wars. They understand they understand what's important. People like to focus on money, and money's important, but ultimately speaking, you can't eat money. You can't consume money. If I had the choice between having a safe full of money or a safe full of seats, I would take the seats because your money would be worthless in a serious emergency. I would take the seeds. Those seeds, that's money. I'll give you a real story that happened in the 1600s. I want to say there was a famine that hit the colonies. By the colonies, I mean the New England colonies that were here before they became America, the British colonies in North America. There was a famine, and all these English people, they came from England, they went to America, they went to the colonies, and there were some people who had seed with them. They brought seeds with them. And there were some people who didn't have any seed. And the people who didn't have any seed, they said, well, the Native Americans will give us seed. The Native Americans will give us seed. We'll be fine. Well, they came to the new land, the new world, and the Native Americans didn't give them seed. And many of those people starved to death. The ones who didn't starve to death were the ones who brought seed with them. So what's more important? There's a great film with Jackie Chan. I forget the name of it, but it's about came out a number of years ago. It's about a Chinese monk who makes pasta. He makes Chinese noodles, and it's a film. I forgot exactly what the theme of the movie was. It's been years since I saw it. But there's a scene where Jackie Chan's character is with this older monk. And the older monk asks Jackie Chan, which is more valuable? Dirt or gold? Soil or gold? And Jackie Chan says, well, of course, gold. And he says, but is it valuable to a seed? Ooh, made you think. So I look at things differently. I've met people in my life who are obsessed with the stock market, and they'll say, well, the Dow Jones is up 200 points. It went down 300 points, went down up 200 points, 250 points. And it's like, okay, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. What can you do about it? It's out of your control, really. It's only in the control of a few people like George Soros. And they go out to eat every single day. They stuff their mouths with bread and butter and whatever. They pay $200 bills. I've met people like this. I've actually met people like this. They go out to eat all the time, every day. They don't cook. They live on huge properties and only grow grass, and they pay thousands of dollars for landscaping. They don't grow any food on it. Not even a parsley plant. And those people, to me, are in poverty. I mean, they may have money, but to me, they're in poverty because for one thing, they're not looking at what is truly important. What is truly important in regards to sustenance, understanding that your food comes from the earth, understanding that your food comes from nature. Yet these people have absolutely zero connection to nature. They've completely disconnected themselves, and they've completely domesticated themselves. And to me, the person who may not have that much money, but they love gardening and they garden a lot and they grow a lot of food, that is wealth. That's wealth. I don't really care about any sort of opposing opinion to what I just said because that's truly, truly the reality. To me, those people are wealthy. I've seen people who, there was this guy I saw, he was a mailman. He's a mailman and he doesn't make a whole lot of money, but he gardens and he has some chickens and he has a little beehive in his backyard and he raises his own honey and he grows some fruit. He has persimmon trees, which are delicious. Persimmons are delicious fruit. And he grows grapes and he grows lots of leafy greens and different types of vegetables. And he's not rich. He's a mailman. He's not poor either, but he's living a normal life. To me, that person is far wealthier than somebody who can tell you everything about the stock market, but they have absolutely no connection to nature. They have no connection to what truly gives us life, and that is that which comes from the earth. We came from the earth. We are literally part earth. Like the human being is part earth and part spirit. That's what we are. We're a composite of those things, earth and spirit. And we can't ignore those two aspects about ourselves. When I got into gardening, I didn't get into gardening because I thought, oh, it's the end of the world, and I grew to love gardening. Just like even if we lived in plenty and abundance, I would still garden because I love it. I love watching the seeds break out. I love watching the seedlings sprout from the earth. I love watching the plant go from having its two fake leaves to having its two real leaves. I love watching the first flowers come up, the little blooms. I love watching the blooms open up. I love watching the bees pollinating the flowers. Like without that, I would be miserable. My brother just went full rod. What's rodding over? What's that? Rodding over. Oh, pantheism. Oh, damn. No, I'm not getting into that. Silver bullets and guns. I mean, you can't eat bullets. You should have bullets, but you can't eat bullets. Love a clear night sky. I agree. I was having a wonderful day yesterday. It was a beautiful day. I bought two new persimmon trees. I'm really getting into persimmon production because persimmons are just like if you want to grow fruit, don't get apples, don't get persimmons because they grow really fast. They produce the most delicious fruit ever, and they're almost indestructible. Like they're really that amazing. I did get a jujube tree. I'm gonna wait and see what comes about from that. But I got two new persimmons last night, and I was having a wonderful conversation with a friend of mine. He's from Serbia. We were talking about politics, and as I was talking to him, I was looking at my chickens. They were wandering around. The sun, the late afternoon sun, the sun was descending. That beautiful orange hue was gleaming on the land. So the chickens running around, and I thought, wow, wonderful, wonderful day. After my conversation, I was heading to the house to do a video. I go to the house. I come back. I check on the chickens. I notice a chicken is sleeping in the egg box. I said, oh, there goes my day. And that sort of ruined my day. And every time that happens, I always have like this little bit of, I feel unbalanced internally because I'm always thinking like, is that going to happen tomorrow? Because like when a chicken gets sick, it's like you got to put everything down because a chicken can die very easily. That's the thing. Like a chicken can die very, very easily. And you really have to if a chicken has an illness, like you got to hit it in the beginning. How much land are we talking here for a family of four? I mean, for a family of four, you could get a third of an acre. I mean, that would be more than enough. I live on 2/3 of an acre, but you could live on half an acre, third of an acre. For a family of four, you can grow a lot of stuff on a small amount of land. Do these trees grow in Michigan? Persimmon trees will grow pretty much anywhere. Yes, you can grow them in Michigan, absolutely, because they're going to go dormant. Michigan gets very, very cold. They're going to grow dormant. Try to see. I'm pretty certain you could grow persimmons in Michigan. I've seen people grow them in Pennsylvania pretty successfully. The first persimmon that I've ever eaten was one from my tree. Last year I purchased a. Was it last year? Yeah, it was last year. Yeah, last year I purchased a Chinese Fuyu persimmon tree, and it had flowers on it when I got it, and those flowers became fruit. And so I got those fruits and I ate them. That was the very first time I ever had a persimmon. I was wondering, how do these things taste like? So I thought, well, I'm growing on this tree and I've never tasted them in my life. So when the persimmons, you can't eat a persimmon unless it's fully ripened. There are some varieties where you can, but these are I want to say they're the astringent varieties, which means that you have to wait for them to fully ripen before you can eat them. I harvested this one persimmon. I ate it and I was like, what is this? This has a level of sweetness that I have never experienced in my life. The yield will be small on 2 acres. What? Seriously? Are you serious, Heather? I know a guy who grew on 1 acre of land. This dude had so much food. You, like for a family of four, you're going to be giving food away if you grow on 1 acre. I knew a guy who grew on 1 acre. 1 acre. He lived on like 5 acres or something. He reserved 1 acre just for food production. This guy, this was his policy. This was his strategy. He had a brilliant strategy when it came to food production. He had 1 acre. No, he had one 90-foot row of okra, one 90-foot row of eggplant, one 90-foot row of tomatoes. He had like a 90-foot row for everything. He had the peppers, one 90-foot row of squash. And from each 90-foot row, he would get tremendous amounts of whatever produce that row had. So the 190-foot row of okra, he had so much okra, he was giving it away. 190-foot row of eggplant, he had so much eggplant, he was giving it away. So like 2 acres wouldn't feed I don't even, that's nonsense. Okay, unless there's something you're not telling me. 1 acre person is a old rule of thumb. I tell you, when we go on a silver standard, you could buy 10 acres of land on a $1. Well, I pray that day comes. How was my harvest? For persimmons, well, that was my first, that was the only persimmon tree I had at the time. I got about, I think it was like 6 or 7 fruits out of it. Again, it's like a 2-year tree. It's the first fruits that it ever produced. In Napoleon's day, there was a French saying, if we had to pay for these wars in gold, they wouldn't happen. 1 acre per person? I don't believe that. You can produce so much food on 1 acre for multiple people. Potato is a very versatile and very helpful vegetable. Yeah, I agree. It's starch and it tastes delicious. I meant wheat to make a year's worth. Oh, wheat. Yeah, with wheat, yeah. But if you're growing things like eggplants, okras, tomatoes, you don't, yeah. But for wheat, yeah, I would agree with you. You're going to need a lot of land to produce a lot because wheat's a tiny little grain. Oh, with livestock, yeah, if you're including livestock, then I mean, if you got, let's say you have a family of 6 people, right? Mom and dad, and then you got the four kids. You could do a lot on 1 acre. You could produce a lot of food and you could keep livestock in that 1 acre easily. You could have an area for goats. You can have an area for a couple cows. For a family of 6, I mean, all you would need is one milk cow. That's all you would need because the cow is going to give you a gallon of milk a day. Now imagine this. Like I honestly didn't fathom how many eggs I would get from chickens. Because like I was so used to just getting eggs from a carton. So you would buy a carton of eggs and you would get 12 eggs out of it. With chickens, you're getting 8 eggs a day, 9 eggs a day, 10 eggs a day. So you're getting every other day, you're getting over a carton of eggs every other day. So one day you get, let's say you get 8 eggs a day. One day you get 8 eggs. Next day you have 8 eggs. That's 16 eggs. Every other day you're getting 16 eggs. That's what you're getting. So you're getting more than a carton. And it's can be difficult to keep up with that, to keep up with that many eggs. You know, you have to be eating you're going to be eating a lot of eggs, which is great because it's a cheap source of protein and you're getting it from your backyard. And if you ration your food right, you're actually not going to be spending that much money for eggs. Secondly, if you have, so same thing with a cow. If a cow is giving you a gallon of milk, that's 1 jug of milk every single day. Now, a jug of milk that you get from the store lasts you for maybe a week and a half, depending on how much you use. If you're getting a jug every day, that's literally going to the store every day and getting a jug of milk. That's what you're going to get from 1 milk cow. It's amazing how much food you get. Are you dyslexic or something, or do you just speed through comments and not read the full sentence? I don't know what you're talking about. I just said, I read your comment about wheat. You said 2 acres wouldn't be enough, and I disagreed. And then you said, no, I meant wheat. And I said, yeah, then you're right. Yes, it wouldn't be enough. I agreed with you. Yeah. Shakshuka. I've made shakshuka with eggs. Absolutely. 1 acre is approximately equal to 43,560 square feet. Yep. Are you saving your seeds? Yes, I save. I try to save as much seed as possible. So like arugula seed, I'll save it. Eggplant seeds, I save it. Chili seeds, I save them. Um, Radish seeds. Some seeds I'm having a little bit more of a challenge in saving, especially like arugula seed. I'm having a little more of a challenge. I live on a 3/4 acre property, and I have to give most of my produce away. I could easily third of it, 3/4. I live on 2/3 of an acre, so yeah, 3/4 of an acre. Yes, you're gonna be producing a lot of food. Hello, go to Beam. Do I have a greenhouse? No. Where I live, I don't need a greenhouse because our summers here are so long. Where I live, it really doesn't start getting cold until November. Hello, Sister Tenacious. Glad you were enjoying the garden talk. British Empire. In the San Fernando Valley, most people grow weeds. You meant weed or weeds? Including possible defense for family, the entire blah, blah, blah. How do you protect your plants from wildlife? So with deers, I don't really worry about it because it's all fenced out. My land is fenced out. I had a problem with mice hardcore because the cat that I had who was hunting the mice sadly passed away. So I bought a new hunter. Actually, I didn't buy it. I got it for free from the government. The government was giving it away. So I have a new cat now because the mice were destroying my eggplants and my peppers. So I have a new cat now, so that shouldn't be a problem anymore. Also, another thing, if you're going to garden, you should get a cat. I'd recommend, especially if you're going to be gardening in the countryside. Even if you're going to be gardening in the city, because I know cities have mice issues. I would recommend getting a cat because mice could come to your land and literally destroy your crops. Like one or two mice can be devastating because when you're sleeping, they're eating. Yeah, so I would definitely get a cat. When it comes to things like insects, um, I don't really grow food that is popular for insects. So like I grow eggplant, and the biggest pest that eggplant has is there's a certain pest that gets eggplant. I forgot what they're called. There were something beetles, flea beetles. Flea beetles usually they don't really attack the fruit; they attack the leaves. I never really had an issue with flea beetles. I'll see some bites here and there. I actually just ignore it. It's never really been an issue when it comes to a good harvest, having a good yield of eggplant. Insects don't eat eggplants. I've never seen an insect that eats an eggplant. Mice will eat eggplants. That's where the danger is. So get yourself a cat. A cat will fix literally all your problems. Go to like a government funded shelter and get yourself a cat. So that's what I would say. Now you will probably deal with things like funguses. Usually, if you're dealing with a fungal issue on a plant, so you're gonna know that your plant has a fungal issue when you see white, like this white cloudy texture on the leaves, or there will be like spots on the leaves. That's a sign of fungus. Usually, what will cure a fungal disease is just a simple mixture of water, uh, a little bit of oil, any sort of oil, olive oil, vegetable oil, a little bit of oil, a little bit of soap, and some like maybe if you have a tablespoon of baking soda per gallon. Baking soda is what is the soap and the baking soda, I think, is what kills the fungus. The oil is what's going to help keep the baking soda stuck on the leaves. That's what's going to kill the fungus. So when it comes to fungal diseases, a simple baking soda water mixture, water, baking soda, oil, and soap mixture does the trick. So I hope that helps. Do you and your dad garden together? I'm My dad actually does help a little bit. Yes, actually helps collect seed pretty well. You have to think you will need a surplus to trade for the things you can't grow. I agree. Do you preserve or can food? Yes. So in 2020, I had so much eggplant that I had an excess amount of eggplant by the time we were hitting the early part of fall because it's still warm, so the plants were still producing eggplant. I harvested all the excess eggplant and we literally pickled eggplants. The thing is that these eggplants weren't mature. They were just the plants kept growing eggplants, so they were all these little baby eggplants. We said all the baby eggplants, and we had enough to make like 12 jars of pickled eggplants. Last year, I had a pretty good harvest of pears, so I made a sweet pear brine, and I just jarred all of them. Yeah, got a lot of peppers and fermented them and made them into a fermented hot sauce. So yes, I do, man. I don't know if if I'm going to be able to do this, but I would like to pickle okra. A pickled okra is delicious. I've tried it before. Serious question: What's your thoughts on growing weed? I know this has become a marijuana debate, right? I don't like weed. People who grow weed and deal weed, they tend to be very nefarious people. I don't agree with growing drugs. So yeah. The French sold the Louisiana Treaty from the U.S., so a source of funding. Grow sunflowers around fencing or garden, and it absorbs pollutants from ground. I didn't know that. I actually grew a lot of sunflowers last year, and I was surprised how many sunflower seeds I would get just from one flower. It's amazing. Do you have any dogs? Yes, I have two German Shepherds. Do you grow your own feed for your chicken? No, I don't have enough land. I buy pellets, food pellets from Tractor Supply, which is pretty cheap. You get like a 50-pound bag for $16. I get 5 of those. It lasts me for about 2 months and a half. I don't feed the chickens a lot. I ration the feed to about a half a cup of feed for each bird. So get yourself a measuring cup, half a cup for each bird. Make a visual image, imprint it in your brain. Remember how that looks like. That's how much you feed the birds every day. That way you save money. You don't have to go buy feed every 2 weeks from overfeeding, and you prevent your chickens from having medical complications, which are usually caused by overeating. How I wish I was in Dixie. Start playing. I eat wheat every day. Very good for you. Powdery mildew. That's right. Evidently, the valerian plant also keeps rodents away. What's the valerian? I have to look that up. With cost of canning jars and this hyperinflation, vacuum sealing using a brake bleeder and jar vacuum chamber is the way to go. You could do that, of course. I've also used what do they call? There's bags you can get where you can get them on Amazon. You put a air I forget what they're called, like these tablets or like air suckers or something. You put them in the bag, you put the food in the bag, and then you put that little preserve tablet in the bag, and then you seal it, and it like keeps all the oxygen out. And with that, you'll have the like we have canned we have bagged like tons of beans, tons of rice in our household, so I'm familiar with that. But yeah, remember picking the golden bugs from potatoes with my grandma when I was little. She'd straight up pour some flammable liquid in the jar with these pests and light them up. That's awesome. Don't y'all over there keep the I love how a Croatian guy is saying y'all, like you're picking up the vernacular. That's awesome. I love globalization. Don't y'all over there keep the jars you already use for later? I mean, why would you have to buy new jars? You know what, Chopo, you're absolutely right. I keep jars all the time. I save jars all the time. Like when I jar beets and turnips, I use old jars. And here's the thing, if you're worried about contamination, it's very simple. Wash your jars before the canning process, right? Wash the the tops of your jars. Wash the lids, obviously, with hot water and soap. Dry them up, and then make your pickling brine, whatever it may be. Pickling brine, the most elemental ingredients for a pickling brine is going to be what? Water, vinegar, and salt. That's the most fundamental ingredients for a brine. I like to add garlic, and I like to add mustard seeds to it. Um, Also, dill is an amazing ingredient for pickling. And you boil up the brine. It's super, super hot, right? You cut your beets up or whatever vegetable you want to preserve, put it in the jar, pour the hot brine in the jar. Any bacteria that's on the vegetables is going to die because of the hot brine. Then you seal it. The jar is going to be so hot, you're not going to even be able to pick it up. You're going to have to let it cool down because the jar is sealed and everything, all the bacteria that was in there, that may have been in there, is dead. You have literally you've literally jarred a vegetable in a very safe way, and you don't have to worry about any contamination because of the extreme heat of the brine. So this is a really easy way to do it. People make things way too complicated. They're like, you got to get this special jars. You got to boil the jars for 30 minutes. I don't do any of that. Wash the jars, boil the brine. First, calculate the amount of brine you need for each jar. So what I do is I fill up each jar with the vegetable. Then I fill it up with water. And it's like, okay. And then all the jars have the vegetables, they have the water, right? I pour the water out of the jar, keep the vegetables in the jar. So I pour all the water out. The sum total of that water, that's going to be my brine. Put it in a pot, salt, vinegar, whatever. Well, I've already made my brine. And then I put dill in the jars, mustard seeds, garlic cloves, boil that brine. When it gets really hot and it's boiling over, turn off the heat and pour the brine into the jar. That brine is going to be so hot, it's going to kill off any bacteria inside. It's super hot by the time I close when I close the lid, when I put the lid and I tighten it, that jar is still super hot. I need a towel. I need to use a towel to grab the jar and then tighten it. Well, what bacteria is going to be inside that jar? None. So you seal it, bacteria can't get inside. Even when after it cools off, bacteria can't get inside of it. And all the bacteria that was inside of it is dead. So you've cleaned everything. I watched Patriot Nurse earlier today who said that when you buy beans, she recommended putting them in a freezer for 3 days to kill potential bugs. I mean, that would work. We buy a lot of beans and we store them in bags, and we seal them in bags. Only Americans I ever met were from Georgia. They used y'all. Okay, so you picked up the vernacular. I move our chickens around the 2 acres we have. I wish I could do that. I don't have that. About once a month, and they all eat all the grass. Michael, have you ever dealt with egg bind? We mostly do pesto, marmalade, jam, and pickled peppers. Oh, delicious. I am no expert. As far as I know, there is a process of cooking the jar already filled. Yes, if you really are afraid of contamination, after you tighten the lid, you can just literally put the jars in a pot of boiling water and boil it for 15 minutes. Then you're really, really safe. Make gardening videos. I should do them again. I should definitely do them again. Christian Estrada, how much land do you have, by the way? Is it a good space? I love pickled stuff. Pickled beets, pickled turnips. Really good pickling. If you want to make a pickle delicious, put dill in the brine. Like what I do is I boil the brine up and then I'll put like the vegetable in the jar, but what I do, I layer it. So I'll put let's say I'm pickling turnips, right? I'll put the turnip slices, a clove of garlic, some dill leaves, more turnip, some garlic, some dill leaves, and I just stack it up, and then you pour the brine. Dill does something. If you ever just like grab dill and eat it, you're like, okay, what's so special about it, right? Something happens with dill when it's like soaking in water for days in vinegar. There's a chemistry that takes place, and there's this flavor that comes about from that combination that is where when you taste it, you don't even know there's dill in it. You don't know, like, oh, dill, like, because when you taste dill raw, it tastes so different from when you taste dill after it's been sitting in a brine for 2 weeks. But when you taste, that's why dill pickles are so delicious. What makes dill pickles so delicious is the mixture of vinegar and dill. Now, if you just make a pickle with just vinegar, what you're going to end up with is what basically an Israeli pickle. If you ever try Israeli pickles are just pickles pickles that have been brined in vinegar, water, and salt, and no dill. when you add dill to a brine, it changes the entire flavor and it makes a new dimension of flavor that is just it's very distinct. And it's the most delicious. To me, that is it's the key ingredient to a delicious pickle. As far as I understand, this is done so that the lid would seal properly. Again, mom's the one who deal. I see. Pickled onions. Yep. Melissa Meir is a YouTube channel. Preserves uncooked meat in jar. I've seen this before. I put a little olive oil on top of my pickles. It helps preserve. Yeah, olive oil definitely is a preservative. That's what we did with our pickled eggplants. Pickled pickles. Yeah, it's cucumbers. Are you considering buying a cow? I don't have the space for a cow. It's only $500 if you have a lawn. She sells feeds. I could get a goat. I would like to get a Nigerian goat one day. I forgot the pickled onions. I love pickled onions also. Delicious. Especially purple pickled onions are amazing. Anyway, guys, I'm going to get going. I have to go do some chores. So I'm going to get going. I've been here for over 2 hours. I will be doing more videos. Don't worry. There is going to be no hiatus. Had a chicken emergency yesterday. I feel bad for not doing a video yesterday. I really do. But I will be doing more videos. I'm probably going to take some clips from this live stream because we had some pretty good moments today. So yeah, anyway, God bless y'all. Be well and have a good weekend. All right, guys.